Hello, and welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee, and tonight's guest is Preston Dennett. But really quick before I introduce him, I let you guys know last week that I was trying to upload my content to Odyssey because of my YouTube strike, but unfortunately, they're having a lot of problems right now with uploading people's content. So I'm trying to figure that out and how to fix it. But in the meantime, you can always follow the show on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts on. You can also download Raised by Giants episodes individually on Spreaker.com. The link to download the episodes will be in the description. So please drop a follow on any and all podcast platforms, even if you mainly watch and listen here on YouTube. Thank you. Links are in the description. And also next week, my episode will be premiering an hour early at 5 p.m. PST instead of 6 p.m. Because I'm going to be on Veronica Bartolini's YouTube show, and it's going to be live. And unfortunately, our shows normally happen at the same time each week. Hers is out on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. So in order to offset it, for me to be on her show, I need to start this one a little bit earlier. But that'll just be for next week, and we'll be back to the regular time after. So without further ado, my guest tonight is Preston Dennett. He began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and coworkers were experiencing dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He is a field investigator for MUFON, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 27 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Hello and welcome to the show, Preston. Thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks, Ryder. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. We got to chat a little bit at the Laughlin UFO Mega Conference a few weeks back. It was nice to meet you in person, my friend.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, nothing like being face to face in the community, right? So since it's your first time on the show, maybe give us a little background on you and your awakening, and maybe kind of what took you down this path of researching the paranormal and UFOs.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's definitely not something I was looking for. I was very skeptical of anything like this, did not believe in UFOs or really anything paranormal. Didn't believe in life after death or ghosts or anything unexplained. But it kind of hit me out of the blue. I had seen this report on the news about a sighting over Alaska, November 17, 1986. I remember it vividly. The newscasters just kind of joked about this pilot who had seen a UFO, two actually, track his commercial jet. The whole crew saw it. It was on radar. None of these details were really presented in the news report. They just kind of giggled nervously, joked about the pilot, and moved on. But I remembered my brother, Mark, my older brother, had said he'd seen a UFO some years earlier. I didn't believe him back then, but for some reason I asked him again about it. And he described a really vivid close-up sighting where he chased a UFO, actually, with his two friends in a car for several miles. I'm like, Mark, are you kidding me? He's like, no, it was metallic, had a dome on top, colored lights. If you don't believe me, ask Greg, ask Phil. Those were his friends. And I did. I called them up and I talked to them, and they were happy to talk to me, described the same thing. And I knew my brother wasn't lying. I knew these guys, were not lying to me, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So I started asking other people, what do you think of UFOs? And found out that a lot of people I knew had actually had encounters. Like you said in the intro, my sister-in-law, she had a sighting with two friends. She later had an encounter with gray ETs while walking outside her home late at night in Van Nuys. I started asking friends. I found I had a friend who had missing time associated with a close encounter. A number of friends had seen UFOs close up, brought it up at work. A lady, her whole family watched UFOs, and her daughter had had an encounter with gray aliens. And she's talking about, her name was Diane, and in walks Dorothy, and she's like, "Oh, UFOs? Yeah, I believe in them. One followed me home from the library." I'm like, "Dorothy, you're kidding." I mean, these were people I'd worked with for years and years. And here they were telling me this. And I could just not believe it. She's like, "Yeah, followed us home. Library closes at 9 o'clock. Takes us 5 minutes to get home. We live right next to the library." And they left at 9. She says, "But when we got home, after this object took off, they looked at the clock. It was 10:15. She says, "It's weird. The time just disappeared. They lost like over an hour of time." So this, yeah, this hit home for me, literally. I was not happy at all. I wanted to disprove the subject. So I ended up going to the bookstores and libraries, and I was going to tell them it's swamp gas. Turned out not to be swamp gas. Turned out that there was a lot of reports, recorded for decades. A lot of serious investigative work already done. Government cover-up. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm still trying to come to terms with it, honestly.
So at what point did the paranormal stuff come before you got interested in UFOs, or was it the other way around? Was UFOs come first and then the paranormal things later?
It kind of came hand in hand because, let's see, a couple of years earlier, 1984, my mom passed away from a sudden heart attack. And I was young. I was 19 years old, and very skeptical of all things paranormal. But shortly after she passed away, during the service, actually, I saw an apparition of her, full in color. I mean, I saw her, and I thought to myself, I've lost my mind. I didn't even think ghost or spirit. I just thought, I must be grieving really hard. Because I was, this was devastating. She was only 49 years old, so it was completely unexpected. And I mean, now I think I saw her spirit, but it started getting me interested in dreams because she kept coming to me in the dream state, saying, "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." And I just knew it was her, but there wasn't life after death. So I'm like, how can this be? I mean, these two things both can't be true. So I started looking into dreams, and that led to sort of lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences. And so by around 1986, 1987, when I started investigating UFOs, I started to have out-of-body experiences. And so they came kind of hand in hand, really at the same time. And also, when I would interview someone, I would leave my questions very open-ended. Wasn't always, just have you seen a UFO? I would be sure to ask them, have you experienced anything else unexplained? And it turned out a lot of the people who were seeing UFOs that I was interviewing had had ghost encounters or a near-death experience or a dream which came true or, past life recall. So it was a big, big adjustment for my worldview. I will never forget 1986, 87, and 88 because my world turned completely upside down.
That's interesting because I think that a lot of these events and a lot of this phenomenon is all connected in some way, and we just don't really know exactly how it's connected. But it's some kind of spiritual experience is what I think a lot of it comes down to. Now, I watched your presentation at the Laughlin UFO MegaCon. A lot of that was about astral travel and how you get outside of your body, and you just mentioned having out of body experiences. So how would you explain or describe this astral place to someone that's never really been there? Like, is it like a realm, a different dimension outside of time and space, maybe a copy of our physical reality but different?
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It was a huge, huge shock to me because, we all have dreams, and I think dreams are partial recall of out-of-body experiences. Sometimes you really feel like you've traveled somewhere, or perhaps you've met a deceased loved one in your dreams, or had really vivid lucid dreams. So what happened for me is I picked up a book about how to do astral travel. It was Robert Monroe's book, Out of Body, I forget what it was called, Far Journeys maybe. And he described how to do it. So I did the exercises and it worked. Couldn't believe it. And started out just exploring the physical world, but it wasn't long before you get pulled to the other side. And yeah, it is absolutely very much like Earth, and this is hard to describe, it's more real, it's more vivid, it's made of light. It is extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, like a beautiful summer morning in a park with flowers everywhere. And I mean, it is just gorgeous. Like the colors are like twice as vivid. Everything sort of glows with an inner light. It is very, very beautiful. Forests, fields, flowers, streams. I mean, there are structures, but it's very pastoral and just sparkles with this just vivid vitality that is really hard to describe other than it's fantastic. I mean, it is amazing.
So let's say you're in this astral realm, right, Preston? And is it exactly the way that things are set up here? Like, let's say that you're in the astral realm right now. Would your room look the exact same that it does in this physical reality that it looks in the astral?
Yeah, for the most part, when you pop out of body, you are in the physical world, or what appears to be a replica of it. There might be slight variations. I will say that. I have popped out, and sometimes you see things as they were perhaps a year earlier, because there's weird time discrepancies, and everything does have kind of a glow about it. I'm talking about the physical world here, or what we would think of, I guess, as the physical world. It does look a little different. It's kind of it's quieter, it's crisper, but it's, yeah, pretty much exactly the same. I mean, if you will see your house, all the houses around you, the buildings, the trees, they are all there. And you can explore all over the place. It's amazing. I mean, you can fly, you can walk through walls, you can do all kinds of things. But eventually, at some point, your astral body gets pulled to the other side, because that's where its sort of natural habitat is. It's kind of hard to stay in the physical world, actually, when you're out of body. You get pulled right over to the, I guess you would call it, the heavenly realms. I'm not religious, really, but that's the best way I can describe it, because it's just amazingly beautiful.
So we hear people talk about all the different kinds of dimensions, right? We got the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions, and so on. So you just mentioned the heavenly realm. Where do you think that this heavenly realm would fall on the scale of dimensions as we understand them, which is very little, I might add. But where would you say, from your perception, that it would fall in the scale of realms? Because we know that there's lower realms and then there's higher realms, of course, right?
Right. Yeah, this became clearer to me with more experience. And of course, I bought every book I could find on this subject after I started having these experiences. And some people have, seriously mapped out. I mean, according to Eastern tradition, there are like 7 different planes. There's the physical plane, the etheric, the astral, the mental, the causal, the Buddhic, and the atmic. And they are all going higher and higher and higher. But for my own personal experience, I initially thought it was, there's the physical plane, and you pop out, you're kind of still in it. I guess you would call that the etheric realm. And the heavenly realms, I think, are quite a bit higher than the physical realm, because I've been in lower realms, which I guess, I don't want to call it hell, because it's certainly not the traditional, religious interpretation that the places I've explored. But there are definitely lower realms below what I would call the traditional other side, where most of us will go when we die. Because on the other side, the heaven, what I would call the heavenly realms, there are no shadows. I have never seen a shadow there. It's just light, light, light. Really bright, doesn't hurt your eyes. It's gorgeous, but there are realms below that for sure. And it took me a while to go there and explore them because they're unpleasant. They are filled with people. It's often very urban, actually, not so much nature there. Lots of cityscapes, I guess I would say, and people in buildings and mall-like settings, and a lot of frustrated people, angry people, people who are addicted, and it's very hard to get their attention. And it's just it's like Earth on a bad, bad day. It's just not nice. So I would call that a lower realm. But yeah, above that, there's the astral realm, and there's ones higher than that as well. Absolutely, I've been there.
So, what do you think? We're not going to dwell on the lower realms for very long, but what do you think is keeping these, would you call them spirits or entities that are in these lower realms? Do you think that they're kind of trapped there, and that's the reason why they're just kind of hanging out and they can't escape, or what do you think is going on with the lower realms?
Yeah, I think they are to a certain extent trapped, largely by their own doing, as near as I can tell. One thing that does happen when you go out of body is you get sort of conscripted to rescue earthbound souls or lost souls. People who are addicted, people who are focused on any negative emotion of any kind, whether it's lust, greed, anger, grief, all of that can trap you. And you try to get their attention and they won't look at you. They're very self-involved, very self-absorbed. For example, I did have a friend who died of alcoholism. Roger, really, he was my best friend actually. And we just couldn't help him. And he eventually passed away as a young man. And it was about 2 weeks after he died, actually, that I just spontaneously went out of body and was taken to him, or I found him, and he was in a very dark place. I mean, there was no light at all, and he was screaming, really unhappy. And he saw me. He's like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. I just told him it'll be okay. I'll try to help. Don't worry. And I ended up, I prayed for him, meditated, asked people to pray for him, and I saw him again, and he was on a slightly higher realm, but it was still dark, still very, much a cityscape. He was behind a barrier. There's lots of barriers and tunnels and hallways and corridors when you're traveling out of body between dimensions. That's kind of how you get there. And I was trying to help him, but someone came and tried to attack me. So I have been confronted by hostile entities. Yeah, there are definitely lower realms. It is possible to pull people out. I have rescued at least one lost soul, I think probably several, once I realized what was happening. I think most people will have no problem getting to the other side. It's those who are extremely skeptical of life after death and suddenly find themselves still alive after they've died and never even consider the possibility that they've passed away. So I think that's one of the factors as well. But yeah, various attachments can keep people earthbound or in the lower realms. Eventually, I think they will all make it to the higher dimensions.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I received information and also talked with several people that think that there's a false light matrix kind of system that whenever we die, we get engulfed into this light, and then we're kind of just recycled right back onto the earth without our memories, without knowing anything of our past. Do you feel like that there's any kind of system like that out there that could be recycling souls right back onto the planet without us being aware of it?
No, I haven't found evidence of that. I've read a lot of books on near-death experiences and people who see the light, and I wanted to try that, and I did successfully. I found, what I guess we would call the light, which, you know, again, I'm not religious, but it's very much like God, I guess. It's a place of very nirvana-like, where you can just bask in the light and it feels great. And all the answers to the universe are there. It's very hard to bring back in terms of, all your questions being answered. But that's what it certainly feels like. And I think reincarnation is absolutely, I think, a real thing. I mean, in my personal experience, because that was something I did explore. Past lives, they started coming at me spontaneously, and then I would sort of ask to be taken to a past life, and did that, yeah, many times. I think people are reincarnated involuntarily. I don't know if that's true or not. I think we do have to come down and learn lessons, and if we don't learn them, yeah, I think it is possible to be pulled right back onto Earth until you learn what you came down to learn. And as near as I can tell, we all go through a bunch of lifetimes. And maybe past life isn't the right term, because the more I look at it, the more I read about this, these are lifetimes that are all kind of going on simultaneously. Time is not the same thing on the other side. You can travel into the past. You can see the future. It's different. It's time kind of collapses. It's hard. I mean, you still have experience a sequence of events, but it's just not the same. I mean, I've never seen nighttime in the heavenly realms. There's no morning or afternoon or evening. It's not like that. That is a product of the physical plane. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we are all going to be reincarnated until we kind of, quote, graduate from the Earth school. Not so sure how voluntary it is or not. So still working on that.
Thank you for your perceptions of that. So when you're out of your body, can you look at yourself? Like, can you look into a mirror and see yourself in the astral realm, or have you tried to do that, or you've been around a mirror or anything when you're outside of your body?
Oh yeah, yeah. When you pop out of body, and when you're a beginner, it's very dreamlike. It's very new. And I thought to myself, oh, is this a dream? Is this a dream? But I eventually did get proof by going somewhere and then going there physically. And one of my early ones, I popped into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and I didn't see not my reflection. You can see your body in bed. That's not always the case. Sometimes your bed appears to be empty. It's very strange. Excuse me. But yeah, when you get to the other side, their thoughts rule. And by that, I mean, you can go to these higher dimensions. I'm assuming this is pretty much where the heavenly realms are. And you can create stuff. You can create your house. You can create people, food, anything you want. And yeah, you can create mirrors. I've done that, and it's amazing and you can see yourself just by, looking at your hands and stuff. That was one of the first things I did. I'm like, wow, my hands are, they look so young and sparkly and unblemished. And did see a mirror several times. I've done this, and it's amazing because all my hair comes back. I lost my hair in my mid to late 20s, and I had great hair, by the way, and it all comes back, and it's really amazing. I mean, it just looks so young. And I've met my mother eventually on the other side. She looked younger than me. I mean, she looked about 20. It's amazing. Yeah, you can manifest mirrors and see yourself. Oh, and yeah, my I'm a pretty thin guy. I used to work out quite a bit, but boy, you are muscular and fit, and yeah, I look great on the other side. It's amazing. I love it.
So it pretty much just give you the prime of your life with your long and luscious locks of love just flowing in the wind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. You are young again. And I've examined my body. I've at one point I'm like, all right, let's undress. Not to get graphic, but yeah, you have your body, and if you stare at it for a really long time, it actually will disappear at some point, and you become this little ball of light, and that's kind of interesting too. But I mostly, yeah, you're just walking around. I wonder, am I dressed when I'm out of body? And yeah, I am. I'm not flying around in my underwear, which is how I sleep. I just naturally have clothes form on me. My actually dress clothes, the clothes I wear to work, is what I'm usually wearing.
That's so interesting, and the reason that I brought up that question is because I co-hosted an interview with Chris Matthew last week, interviewing Ronnie Dawson, a contactee and experiencer, and he said when the ETs took him outside of his body to communicate with him, one thing he noticed right away is that he didn't have any legs, right? And the other thing that I found very interesting, which makes sense, that when he said it was he could move through anything like solid objects and stuff, which makes sense because you're in an astral spiritual realm. But when he did, he could feel them going through his body, right?
Oh yeah,
Like they were super dense. Have you experienced anything? Is that how it is for you as well?
yeah, it's amazing. Because that's one of the first things I started having fun with is walking through walls. Actually, it took me a while to gather the courage to first do it, because kind of just after you learn how to stay out, because it's very much like walking a tightrope, or I don't know, playing a musical instrument or something. It's delicate. You have to kind of learn how to maintain it, and then you have to kind of learn how to move, learn how to see, and it's all just kind of trial and error. It's all sort of done through thought and willpower. And I'm like, all right, let's walk through walls. And yeah, you can do it, and you can feel it. And different walls will feel different. And sometimes it depends on how dense you are in your astral body. Because I have like headed for a wall and bounced right off of it. Shocked me, knocked my socks off. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what's wrong? I can't get through the darn wall. But eventually you get to the point where you can do it so easily that you don't even feel it. But I remember one time I came upon a brick wall. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I'm going to keep my eyes open this time, which was a little scary because I'd not done that before. But it was really cool. I kept my eyes open. I could see the red brick right as I walked through it. It was really cool, actually. And you feel it through every single centimeter of your body, and everywhere you can feel it. And I remember I would always fly around the telephone wires, because there's lots of telephone wires when you're flying around your house and stuff. And I thought, well, I'm non-physical. There's nothing to be afraid of. You can't hurt yourself when you're out of body. It's safe as sleeping. Fly through the telephone wires. I had read other people who've done that. And finally I just gathered my courage and I flew right through them. And I heard this little zit zit sound of electricity, and there was a flash of light. It startled me. But I did it a few times and that sort of faded away too. So I think you kind of have different densities, and it depends on what density you're at, on how successful you are at moving through objects. But it's all kinds of fun. Yeah, you can absolutely do it.
So can you do or affect anything in that realm, like that would affect our physical reality in this 3D dimension? Like, can you interact with anyone or anything affecting the environment at all? Or I'm sure you've probably tried, right? What's that
Oh
like?
yeah, yeah. I became obsessed with it for a year, and it's interesting because you pop out of body and you're roaming through your house, and sometimes you just like go right through the front door, And sometimes I would find myself opening the front door. I'm like, well, that's weird. But what I was actually doing was opening the astral version of it, because I would, wake up and my door would be closed. So I started doing all kinds of experiments, like setting up a pen, just standing straight up. I would knock it over, and I couldn't do it. You're a ghost. I could not turn on light switches. I tried everything I could do to move an object, and I never was able to do it, which was frustrating because I'd read other people who said that they have been able to do this. And finally, I was talking to this one guy, and he's like, oh, you just have to step down your vibration. And if you really want to do it, you just stay near your physical body and pull vital energy from it, and you should be able to do it. So that's kind of on my bucket list right now. But I would often, go to, like, my sister-in-law. She's really into this. I taught her how to do it. She's had a number of them. And I would appear in front of her. No one could see me. I've gone to family members and I'm floating around, friends. I'm like, here I am. Do you see me? Do you see me? No, they do not see you. It's very strange. And I've done this many, many times. And only recently, like last year, I found a lady in Florida who was actually a contactee. She's in one of my books, and she's had a lot of out-of-body experiences. And so I spontaneously was, I was out of body. I'm like, what should I do? What should I do? Let's go to Dolly's house. And boom, you're flying. And then suddenly you kind of teleport there. If it's a long distance, you'll just zoom, boom, you're there. And I'm looking around for her. I'm in her garage. I saw a man there. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I walked up to him. I'm like, hey, who are you? What's your name? He says, oh, I'm Henry. I'm like, okay. And then in walked Dolly. And she had her back to me. And I'm looking at her, and suddenly she whirls around and looks at me. She's on the phone. And she looks right into my eyes. And I'm like, oh, maybe she can see me. And she said, oh my God, something like that. What are you doing here? I can't talk. I'm on what I thought she said is, I'm being robbed, is what I thought she said. I'm like, oh my God, and that kind of startled me, and it pulled me back. And I woke up the next morning. I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to call her. But she called me, and she says, I saw you last night. I'm like, you did? She's like, yeah. You were standing in my garage. I'm like, wow, I saw you too. And did you say anything? Because I didn't want to tell her. I wanted her to tell me what she said. I'm like, what did you say? What did you say? What did you tell me? She says, oh, I told you that I was on the phone with Rob. I'm like, oh, okay. She said, I'm with Rob, is what she said. And I thought she said, I'm being robbed. Because it is a little different the way you hear when you're out of body. But she definitely saw me. And it's funny. I told her, I'm like, there's a man in your garage. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I described him. And she's like, oh my God, that's my ghost. This is a former boyfriend, I guess, who had passed away and is now stalking her from the other side. And she's like, yep, that's Henry. I'm like, oh, well, he's still there, just so you know. And it was she who told, she later came to my room. I couldn't believe it. I'm lying in bed, sleeping actually, and suddenly I wake up because my room is filling with light. And there's Dolly. She's grinning at me from ear to ear, smiling. Her eyes are sparkling. The golden light is surrounding her. I'm like, oh my God, you look amazing. She looked really young and beautiful. She's, in her 60s. So that was cool. And, since then we've had some shared out-of-body experiences that were amazing. And it was her, real quick. She told me that there are spirits in my house. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I think there's at least a couple of them. And I found that interesting because I had talked to another medium who said, there are spirits in your house. And, it kind of didn't surprise me because I kept going into the back room where I keep all my UFO books, my books on ghosts. I mean, I've got a room filled with books, like 1,000 of them. And I kept finding the light turned on. And I know I turned it off because, I don't go in there. And not only the light, but the fan. I have a little fan on the roof. And it happened 4 or 5, maybe 6 times. So I finally came in there once, the fan and the light are on. I'm like, all right, who's doing this? Stop it. What are you doing? And that was the last time it happened, but it happened enough that I began to wonder if there were spirits. And one time I popped out of body and I'm just rushing through the house. I don't normally stay in the house. I want to go out and explore. But I remembered what, these 2 ladies had told me. So I started exploring the house, looking to see if there was anyone else in it. And went into the bathroom. No one was in there. And then I saw a reflection in the mirror of someone standing behind me in the hallway. And I whirled around and there was this man, brown hair, kind of portly, round face, middle-aged. And I'm like, whoa, who are you? Mm-hmm. And he says, oh, I'm Mac. My name's Mac. I'm like, okay, Mac, I think it's time for you to go. And I grabbed his arm. And it's funny, he felt physical. When you're on the other side with another person and they're on the other side, it feels very much like here. You both feel physical. So I grabbed his arm and I pulled him outside. I'm like, you have to go. And I came back inside and I found another guy. I'm like, what's your name? He's like, I forget it. He said, I think it was Bill. He's like, I'm Bill. I'm like, Bill, I'm going to ask you to leave. And I grabbed his arm and I pulled him out. So, and I de-haunted my house. I don't know if they're still here or not. I haven't had any indication that they are, but man, that was definitely a weird experience.
And that's a perfect segue into the paranormal phenomenon. So tell us a story, maybe your favorite paranormal encounter or something that you've experienced personally, because you're well versed in this field and you've kind of been hitting the UFO circuit hard. So let's throw a paranormal story in there. And I mean, after all, they're not that much different, of course, but we'll get into some UFO stories here later on too. But tell us your favorite paranormal experience that seemed truly unexplainable.
Oh gosh, I started doing a lot of ghost research, doing ghost hunting, and I've interviewed a lot of people who've had really incredible experiences. I haven't had a whole lot of ghostly encounters. I've had a lot of precognition, dreams that come true, some clairvoyance. But I was at a haunted house. I had felt people like poke me in the armpit or tug my hair when I'm like, whoa, and I whirl around behind me and there was no one there. But I'd say the most amazing one that I've personally experienced, well, there's a couple. One I did go to a physical medium and she did what's not Ouija board, but table tipping. Not sure if you've heard of that, but you all sit around a table and the table rises up and goes down and will knock once for yes or twice for no. That was really cool. There was a bunch of people doing it before me around the table, and I thought, they're probably tilting with their fingers. But when it was my turn, I could see instantly that it wasn't. And I finally asked everyone else, except for the medium, to leave and let me and her do it, because I wanted to investigate, and everyone agreed. And the table went right up with just me and her. And so I said, Donna, can you put just one hand on the table and see if it goes up? And it did. I'm like, okay, try just one little finger, your fingertip, and see if it will go up. Boom, it did. And finally I did it. I'm like, okay, don't touch the table at all. Let me try it. And the table just went, I couldn't get it to rise up, but that table was moving under my hands and there was no one touching it. That was really cool. But another really interesting experience I had was where the daughter was having a lot of poltergeist activity. And I was in the house and suddenly I was in the living room. There was this crashing noise coming from the kitchen, which is kind of blocked off by a wall, a partial wall. And I turned and I looked and I didn't see anything. And I looked at, the mother and she's like, oh my God. And I can't even describe this noise. It was like every pot and pan in that kitchen fell to the ground is what it sounded like. And glass, I heard glass breaking. I heard little springs going off, doing, 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 little sprinkly sounds. I mean, this was like a and an explosion too, like this pop, pop, just a clatter like you've never heard before. It was really strange. And I went running in there as it ended, pretty much right when I ran in there, the sound stopped because it was prolonged. It was a good 2-3 second sound. And there was nothing there. And I'm like, wow. And I opened the pantry thinking, okay, there's something in the pantry. Was it, a full-on door? No, nothing was out of place. I started opening all the cabinets, the refrigerator. There was nothing. And this is interesting to me because I've heard other people describe this sort of explosion type sound. That was really cool to, I don't want to say witness, but I guess that's, hear. So that was probably one of my best, in terms of personal experience, unexplained ghost encounter.
So through all of your research, what do you think this phenomenon actually is, Preston? Because it seems to encompass a lot of different kinds of activity. You have people that seen their dead relatives like yourselves. A lot of people see a lady in white or someone in a dress seems to be a very popular one. And, they seem to love kitchens. A lot of people have haunted kitchens. You have people that experience, the poltergeist-like activity, knocking things over, slamming doors, cabinets, turning lights on and off, and like physically interacting in this reality. And then you have, the demonic kinds of activity, getting unexplained scratches, burns, claw marks, possessions. So I guess what I'm asking is, what's your take on the different kinds of hauntings? Like, what are they and what do they mean?
Yeah, I've investigated cases of every kind: shadow people, demonic hauntings, Bigfoot. Had a couple of Bigfoot encounters, by the way. So I'm the kind of researcher who likes to experience it myself. I want to dive in deep and see what's really going on here. Talk to people who had near-death experiences, cryptozoology, you name it. I've looked into it. And as near as I can tell, these phenomena do have a lot of similarities. A lot. I mean, like, a near-death experience has a lot of parallels to an onboard UFO encounter, but they are not the same thing. And as near as I can tell, these are all separate phenomenon. When someone sees a ghost of a deceased relative, that's what it is. And as far as a demonic spirit, yes, I am convinced they do exist, because people who have had the kind of haunting you're talking about with scratches and knockings and bad odors and cold spots often see these very large, dark apparitions that are like 6 to 10 feet tall, and it's just a black mass. It's not, a deceased relative or a normal spirit, which has a human appearance. There's something very dark about some of these things. There are angelic encounters, and I think these are separate. I don't think this is one phenomenon wearing different masks, which is what some researchers have concluded. Because there are cases where stuff can come all at once. I did have a case where a guy had a UFO land in his backyard, had a Bigfoot encounter the next day, and in the weeks that followed had a poltergeist outbreak. And that raises some serious questions about what's going on here. But I don't think that's cause enough to say that this is the same thing. I really don't. I think a Bigfoot is a Bigfoot. I think a demon is a demon. A ghost is a ghost, and an alien is an alien. I think there's a lot of different stuff out there, and they can have strong parallels. They can affect people in the same way. I think what happens sometimes is you can have a very strong paranormal experience, and it will rip a hole in the veil, I guess, between the worlds. Or perhaps you're in an area where it's conducive to a lot of different types of activity because of the energy there. And so you will have ghosts, and you will see aliens and shadow people and a wide variety of stuff. I think sometimes a person might have a near-death experience and it raises their vibration. So suddenly they're able to see ghosts. Same thing with a UFO encounter. That can wake you up spiritually. I mean, it tears you open, and suddenly you're attracting ghosts, and you're attracting a wide variety of paranormal experiences. But it's my assessment that aliens are aliens, and they're people like us from other planets, and spirits are spirits. And there's ghosts, there's residual hauntings, sort of replays of events that isn't a live spirit. It's what I would call an echo, kind of. So it can get a little complicated, but there's a wide variety of paranormal phenomena that I think is actually separate. These are various manifestations of different types of beings.
Yeah, and one of my favorite kinds of well, not really favorite, but the most fascinating that you already kind of brought up is the residual haunting, right? I find that one really fascinating just because of the implications of it. The haunting is non-interactive with us. It just kind of plays out a memory, and the energy is so strong that it's kind of imprinted upon our reality, you know and this kind of brings me to the next question is what if these souls and spirits are kind of stuck within a memory, right? Or is on like an overlay kind of system with our existence, and this could explain why a lot of spirits are attached to certain homes, buildings, or areas because they think that they're still alive, like you were kind of saying earlier, and they're just replaying out what they already know, like a tape, and they're stuck.
Yeah, this can happen. And I mean, there is residual hauntings. And I remember I worked at an office, and sometimes I have to work late and I'd be alone and I would hear voices. I'm like, gosh, I'm imagining this. And finally, I started to hear them really clearly, and I ran into the other room because it was always kind of, in the other room. No one was there. And I experienced that enough to see that residual hauntings is a real thing. But there are spirits who become earthbound and will replay events as well. Because what can happen to a person who dies and doesn't realize it is they fall into sort of a dream realm. The other side is very much the dream world. And if you're not aware of it, you can reach a lower state of consciousness where you're almost not self-aware. And you can relive trauma over and over and over, and or just become trapped. And what happens is when you're on the other side, time moves quicker. The higher you go, time moves really fast. So if you go all the way to, I would say, the highest dimension you can get, you are encompassing the past and the future to a much greater degree than if you're much lower. So a person who pops over to the other side, the time starts moving quickly, and it can be, a couple of years will go by very quickly, or many years, and they won't be aware of it. So this is why we often have spirits who are like trapped and have no idea that it's 2021, and they think it's 1846 or something, because they've been stuck and sort of in a trance or in a slightly subconscious state. I remember I read about rescuing lost souls, and I thought, well, I don't know if I've ever done that. I want to try that. And sort of asked to do it. A lot of people, I think pretty much everyone, does have spirit guides that will guide you through your adventures. I was largely alone. I never really perceived spirit, well, not never, but rarely was anyone ever with me that I could see. Found out later there probably was, but they were watching from a distance, because kind of the guy who likes to, no, don't tell me, let me figure it out. Kind of that kind of guy. So I think that's what was going on. But I'm like, all right, when you pop out of body and you want to do something, you set that intention. Like, I want to learn about a past life. I want to meet a enlightened master. I want to go to a healing temple. I want to meet my mom. So, I would do all of these things. And one time I popped out, I'm like, I want to rescue a lost soul. And boom, I'm taken to this house and down into the crawl space. It didn't have a basement. There was just a crawl space. And there was a little girl there. And she looked like she was about 6, maybe 7 years old. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a pretty little girl, crying, all curled up. She was very sad. And I got an instant impression that she had been, murdered, and worse. So I was like kind of horrified, but I kept my cool because I wanted to help her. And I'm like, oh, are you all right? Are you all right? You're okay. And she just looked at me and kind of looked away. I'm like, no, you're okay. Oh, you're okay. Would you like to fly? I can show you how to fly. Because sometimes I would do this. I would just come upon a group of people. I'm like, let's fly, guys. I can fly you over to the other side. And now I realize I was probably already rescuing lost souls because I'd done that a bunch of times where I would just come upon a person or maybe 2 people and be like, I can show you how to fly. And they'd be looking at me like I was nuts. I'm like, no, for real. Take my hand and I'll fly you over. And so I tried that and she didn't respond. She did not want to do it. And I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? What do I do? And then I just hit on it. I'm like, well, how would you like to see your mom? I can take you to see your mom. And she's like, oh, really? Not in so many words, but she just kind of looked up at me and like, oh, and was excited about it. And so I'm like, yeah, I can take you to your mom. And grabbed her. She grabbed my hand, her sweet little hand in mine, and off we went. Flew up through the house, and how I get to the other side is just flying straight up really fast. That seems to work. And boom, you pop out to the other side. And right when I did that, she let go, and I lost track of her, which often happens. That's what I read would happen, and that's exactly what happened. I really tried to keep track of her, but I couldn't. She was off to wherever she was going. But I feel like I did it. It was really interesting. Yeah.
That's an amazing experience, Preston. And here's another thought too: is what if? Because we know we're multi-dimensional spirit beings, right? Meaning that we exist on every level of reality all at once. Now, what if some of these paranormal experiences and events are actually just us on another level of existence or reality, right? Because we do exist on multiple levels, right? And this could be the reason why some only individually experience paranormal events when someone else could be standing in the same room but not hear or see anything. Could be because it's not meant for anyone else but you. You have any thoughts on that?
Uh, yeah. I'm not sure exactly what's going on because it definitely feels real when you're experiencing it. I have heard, I've read that when people rescue lost souls, sometimes it's yourself in a past life. I found that very interesting. And I have, done a lot of past life exploration, and you find yourself as another person. It's very strange. I was in the Holocaust. I was an elderly Jewish man who I got pulled onto a bus, and next thing I know, I'm at a concentration camp. There was guards. I had to run the whole time. I ran right up to a pit, and they shot me in the head. Didn't have a chance to think, but I know what it's like to, be that man, and it was different. And I was a woman who was raped and murdered. And I knew what was going to happen. And I'm like, no, I am not going to go through this, because I remembered it. And so I did what I do to get back to my body, which is, if you just think about your body, it'll take you there. If you're scared, or really, it's very easy to get back. Staying out is what's hard. But I freaked out. So I started opening and closing my eyes, wiggling my fingers and toes, and just demanding to be taken back. And I was. But yeah, you can experience being different people. I was a Native American, I was a black man, or a young boy, actually. No, not so young. I was 17 in the Civil War times. So you do get a sense of being other people. Uh, yeah, and I have interviewed people who've seen UFOs, and the people next to them couldn't see the UFO, which is very strange. So there is sort of a selective aspect to some of this stuff. Many people will have a ghost in their house, and like the kids will see it, but the parents won't. And the kids are screaming, "It's right there!" And the parents don't see it. I started looking at my files. Over half involved women and children. Very few men that I'd interviewed, in terms of all the people I've interviewed with ghosts. Not many men there. It was mostly women and children. So there is definitely something to that, but I haven't quite figured it out.
So you brought up UFOs there. Maybe share one of your favorite UFO stories. Maybe one that you've wanted to talk about but haven't really got the chance to yet, because you've been on a lot of shows and talked with a lot of people. Let's try and maybe get one of those unique UFO cases for our last topic here.
One of my own, or
Well, yeah, either one of your own you've investigated, or one that either one is fine. Yeah, let's do one of your own. I don't think I've heard you talk about too many of your own cases. Yeah, do one of your own.
Yeah, I haven't talked a lot about my own encounters for whatever reason. I'm certainly not shy about it, but yeah, at UFO MegaCon, that was the first time I actually presented on my own experiences. So that was fun. And now that I'm looking back on some 35 years of research, I have had a number of encounters. I started counting them up. I'm like, wow, there's a dozen of them or so. One that I don't think I've ever mentioned was actually quite recent, November of last year. And I was just going out into the backyard, like trying to call down a UFO. Just mentally, like, hey, you guys, are you out there? I've seen you before. I've had a number of sightings. And was shocked to see this light just flash on and off. And it was, much brighter than a star. It clearly wasn't a plane or anything like that. I mean, this is late at night, and this bright light flashes on and off in the sky. I'm like, wow, what? That was cool. What was that? Is that all you? Is that it? Surely you can do better than that. And as soon as I said that, this owl came swooping down low over my head, real low. And I'm like, wow, it was big. And if you've read at all about UFOs, there's this weird owl connection. Gosh, what's the guy's name? McClelland. Mike Cleland, that's it. Mike Cleland has written a book on this too, actually. UFOs and owls and synchronicity. And I've definitely interviewed a lot of people who've had that sort of thing, but happened to me. And I wonder if that was a real owl or something else, but that was cool. And yeah, I've had a number of really interesting UFO sightings. Once I was driving home from San Diego, and on a crowded freeway, the 5 freeway, it's like a crowded freeway.
Yeah.
And, it's a lot of cars on there, even though this was fairly late at night. And very low cloud cover, I'm going to say 500 feet. And I looked up over the freeway ahead of me, a couple of, quarter mile. And I'm like, what the heck is that? It was this huge globe of white light, much bigger than a street light. It was like the full moon, but like right there over the freeway and close. I mean, it wasn't like distant in the sky because there's a very low cloud cover. I'm thinking, gosh, is there something hanging over the freeway that I've taken this route many times, many times. And I'm like looking at it, and no one seems to notice it. And as I get like right up to it, I can see that this is not attached to anything. It's this giant globe of light. Soft white light. And right as I'm looking up at it, kind of peering up through my windshield, I got a message, and it was really clear. And it's just shocked me. It was a very personal message just for me. And this thing said, not in words, but in strictly impressions, that my niece, Alexandra, had just been born. And I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. This is how I know it was, this is how I remember her birthday. I'll never forget it was July 9th. Yeah, this UFO came to tell me that, which is so strange, but not the first time I've had, a UFO come and give me a message. That's happened at least one time before. Yeah.
So what did they say? What did they say before the time before that? Was it something similar, like good news types of things?
Yeah, it was actually quite different. Had been interviewing this lady, I'll call her Wendy, who had been abducted and had hybrid babies and gray encounters with gray aliens. I mean, just a really extensive encounter that was really extensive. I mean, she once jumped, grays were surrounding her bed. She jumped up and kicked one in the neck, and its neck snapped and it fell down, apparently dead, and the other grays that were there scooped it up and disappeared through the wall. And I'm like, wow, this is an amazing encounter. I'm pretty sure she's telling me the truth. I mean, I talked to her many times. She's since become a very good friend, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I'm like, is this real? Is she telling me the truth? I know she is, but I just couldn't quite wrap my head around that this was real. And this was, 1994, thereabouts. I was in my condo, third-story condo in Canoga Park, California, and transcribing her interview. And I'm like, leaning back in my chair, I'm like, wonder if she's telling me the truth. And I knew she was, but I couldn't believe it. When I got this impulse to run under the roof of my condo, so I grabbed my glasses. I actually resisted it first, but I couldn't resist it. And didn't even think about what I was doing until I got up there, and I'm on the roof, which you're not allowed up there. And I thought, oh no, what am I doing up here? I'm not supposed to be up here. And I was up there maybe not a minute, I'm going to say 10 seconds, looking north across the street. This is like Owens Mouth and Van Owen near that intersection. And I'm looking maybe just 200 feet across the little LA River there, Cement River, and this light appears very low at treetop level, not even 100 feet. And it was a bright orange, kind of fiery light, fairly large. And it gave me a message. And this was the clearest message I've ever gotten from a UFO personally. It said, not in English, not speaking in words, but again, a real strong impression, like, it's us. It's Wendy's ETs. It's us. You don't believe her, huh? Well, watch this. Watch this. Watch what we'll do this for you. And this thing, no kidding, starts darting back and forth, super fast at really acute angles in a way that was a clear display of, maneuverability. And wow, that was shocking. I mean, they talked to me. I couldn't believe it. That was so cool. And it was a quick sighting. It was a very quick thing, but I got the message for sure. I'm like, okay. When Wendy's telling me the truth, I got it. Sorry, didn't mean to doubt you. I told her, she was amazed. She ended up taking me to see a UFO again.
So was Wendy's experiences and contact perceived by her to be positive? Was it an overall positive experience? Because you said that she kicked a gray in the neck. I mean, that would have to kind of be they would have to be a little threatening at that point for her to kick a gray in the neck. So what did she kind of get out of that experience? Was it more of that kind of fear type of thing, or was it overall more positive?
Initially, it was very traumatic. She was very scared when she started having missing time, waking up, seeing these grays. She was not happy. She was terrified. She perceived it as very negative. and would wake up on a UFO and screaming and fighting them all the way. Not happy about it. She booby trapped her whole house. She locked the doors. She would put up things over the door. She put tacks on the floor. She tried everything she could to stop them from coming. And they kept coming. And it was very, very scary at first. But at some point, she got over her fear. She says it was just too exhausting to be afraid. And one time wakes up. She's in the sky, surrounded by grays, being pulled up into a UFO. She can see it, and this door is opening. And she said, put me back right now. And they did. And that was kind of the turning point for her. She says, after that, it wasn't as scary. And she started to have real communication with them. She started to recall meeting them as a young child. And she would play games with other hybrid grays. They taught her how to do telekinesis. They taught her how to do hands-on healing. She was very effective at it. She actually gave me a healing once. I could feel the energy pulsing through my body. So it kind of went 180 degrees and went from a perceived negativity to very positive. She's an extremely spiritual person, very, very psychic. I've seen her perform psychic stuff over and over again. I remember once we were going to a restaurant. She says, oh, they're going to spill my dinner on me and I'm going to get a free meal. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, no, I'm serious. I bet you anything. They will spill my food all over me. And that's exactly what happened. I laughed so hard. And when she spit, the plate spun and landed on her, and a little piece of tomato sauce went toink and went right on me, but it mostly covered her. Oh, the waitress must have thought I was nuts, laughing so hard. But and I was watching her carefully to make sure she didn't trip, the waitress or anything. No, that's not what happened. The waitress tripped, and boom, went sailing. The plate went sailing right into Wendy. It was hilarious.
So did she figure out what the purposes were for the initial contact experience with the Greys? Because I know the Greys have gotten a really bad rap over the years as being negative beings. So did she figure out what the ultimate purpose of them contacting her and abducting her in the very beginning, what the purposes of that was for?
Yeah, she found out that she had given permission. She was not aware of that at first. And this is something I've heard from a number of people. They're like, I'm being kidnapped involuntarily. But what happens is people's consciousness is compartmentalized. And the Greys come down and they're talking to your whole self, your subconscious, your superconscious, not just your ego, which is what a lot of people perceive here on Earth. This is why the ETs, I think sometimes there's a miscommunication going on here. But they told her that she had volunteered to be a part of this project, and she recalled that. She had volunteered to offer her genetics to help revitalize their race because they're having a lot of trouble reproducing due to genetic damage. They told her how they had been in a war and all this stuff which I've heard from a number of people, by the way, who are telling in its essentials the same story about how Greys have lost the ability to reproduce, lost some of their emotions and this sort of thing, and are essentially human, once looked like us, but have suffered pretty severe genetic alterations. And they told her that she's part of this project and that she volunteered for it. And it was their gift to her to give a huge boost in her spiritual growth. Heard that over and over and over again. This is sort of the trade-off. People who volunteer for this get a giant gift. They become super psychic and can do hands-on healing or start channeling or having astral travel or past life recall or all kinds of stuff like this. So there is a very strong spiritual aspect to this that's often overlooked, because what happens is a person has an encounter and they have a very strong fear response because, let's face it, it is scary when something comes into your room and says, come with us. Even if they do say, and this is what they always say, don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. That is by and large almost always the first words a gray will tell a person. And it's largely true, I think, though people do have PTSD and nightmares and anxieties. The grays are not trying to scare people. They're just having a little bit of difficulty dealing with our very strong fear response. And once we get past that, this is when experiences become very, very spiritual. And that was absolutely true in Wendy's case. And I would say with most people I interview who do move past the fear barrier, because what happens, people often get, and that's the first thing that comes out in the memory is the trauma, because we have to work through trauma. And when someone suddenly remembers, being physically examined and, a needle coming at them or something along these lines, they think that's the extent of their experience when it's not. The really good stuff they haven't gotten to yet. It's still buried in amnesia, because what the grays will do is they say, oh, this person is having a very strong fear response. We should probably, for their own good, erase it, put it into their subconscious so they can't remember until they're ready. So, yeah.
So this was more for like them than it wasn't so much because we've heard, abductions, people getting their genetic material for like a hybridization kind of program, making ET human hybrids, basically genetically engineering a completely new race. So did this have anything to do with that, or did it just was 100% for them to regenerate their genetic material because it had been damaged?
Yeah, I think that is one of their main agendas. Absolutely. But they seem to be very interested in all things human, all things Earth. They give people messages, and it's often, why are you messing around with nuclear power? Why are you polluting your water? Why do you use fossil fuels when there's other energy sources? They're very concerned. They'll warn people about hurricanes and earthquakes and tornadoes and landslides, and says, basically are telling us over and over again, and this is true whether it's grays or human-looking ETs or praying mantis or strange humanoids of any kind, it's the same message. So it's beyond just pure self-interest, I think. They're very concerned about our planet. I think they're very concerned with waking people up, getting them to become psychic, become telepathic. We have a lot of crime. We have a lot of divisiveness. We have a lot of hate. We have a lot of the wealth is not distributed equally. We've got a lot of problems on this planet, and they seem to be very concerned with helping us with that. And the way they're trying to do it is make us telepathic, so people can't lie to each other. Make us understand that we are all one, and that when you hurt someone, you are hurting yourself. This is a big, big message from them. And I'm really encouraged. I don't think that these guys are just purely in it for themselves. They are working really hard. They're collecting animals of all kinds, plants of all kinds. If there should be an existential crisis, we're going to be counting on these guys to help us out. And I think there's good evidence pointing towards the possibility that they will intervene, and if there should be a huge, huge disaster. Because I do have cases like this. I've got many cases where people have been rescued from drowning, falls, illness. That's one of my books, The Healing Power of UFOs. This is what's happening when someone's being physically examined. They're often being healed of everything from colds to cancer. People have been rescued from car accidents, assault, weather, bad weather, hurricanes, a volcanic eruption. I've got a case where thousands of people were apparently rescued from a volcanic eruption in Colombia. So I think UFOs are good news for humanity, despite the bad reputation that grays have gotten. I think there's a concerted effort by the people who are covering this up to make grays look bad. We're a very fear-based society. We're taught to fear, and we're it's just not warranted. The Greys' reputation as, evil bug-like torturers, it's not true, and it's unwarranted. The truth is they are good news for us. They are trying to help us, trying to raise our consciousness, trying to teach us. They are doing the best they can without actually taking over. This is, I think, supported by the actual first-hand cases. People who have these encounters are spiritually transformed for the better. This is not a demonic phenomenon. Demons want to hurt you. They want to destroy you. They want to scare you. It's not what's happening with the UFO phenomenon. It's the opposite. People are being healed. They're becoming spiritually enlightened to an incredible degree. Most people I talk to will say that they're happy, ultimately, that they've had these encounters. Not everyone. Some people do have negative encounters. There is a bell curve going on here where some people do have negative encounters. But often I think these are people who have had a strong fear response or perhaps have met Greys that are just very urgently working on their agenda of getting genetic material, and perhaps are not as compassionate as some of the others. It's hard to say, but I'm certainly not going to discount that some people do have negative experiences. But by and large, I'm very encouraged.
I'm glad you kind of differentiated that and saying that there are negative encounters, because I don't believe that anything is all good all the time, because we live in a polarity reality where there kind of has to be balance between them. And I think that there are a majority good extraterrestrials and good ETs, but there also is the opposite side of the spectrum too. It's just like, good humans and bad humans. And where we get in trouble is trying to lump them all into the same category. It's exactly like what you said. Like, a lot of people think that they're all demons, right? And then some people think that they're all good, whenever the truth is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I have talked to people who've had negative experiences for sure. The worst I personally have heard in my own cases is, the physical examination, which can be painful, can be very scary. Some people are not given any explanation at all. They don't like it. They're not happy. But I have read of accounts that are harrowing, to say the least. I remember there was one case involving a lady who was given what amounts to a pain threshold test. They wanted to see how much pain she could withstand before passing out. That's not very nice. And yeah, some people feel that they have been experimented on, and some people's health has suffered. There are a number of women who have had pretty severe gynecological problems because of this sort of thing. And people do wake up with bruises and scoop marks. But like the whole implant phenomena, a lot of people say, oh, that's terrible. They implanted me. This is awful. It's mind control. It's tracking. Nope, it's not what's going on here, because I've talked to a number of people, and the explanation is someone along the lines of health. Over and over again, people who have actually asked, what's the purpose for an implant, are told that it's to boost your immune system. It's to monitor your vitals. It's to measure the level of pollution in your body. It's along these lines is what I hear over and over and over again. And one person's like, you do use it for tracking? And they're like, no, we can track you by your own vibratory level. Each person has a sort of a fingerprint of a sort of a vibration that they give off. And that's how they track you. And one lady I talked to, she had an implant removed, and they came back and re-implanted her. So clearly it wasn't the implant that they're using for tracking. But yeah, it's a wide universe. There's a lot of different people out there. As near as I can tell, they are people very much like us. Their behavior falls under the same umbrella as human behavior. But what we don't see is what I would call outright torture, outright sadism, wanting to hurt people, wanting to scare them. I don't get anything like that.
There's something strange that I've kind of been thinking about too, is that, back in the day, it kind of seemed like it was the phenomenon was, kind of nothing but flying saucers, right? Like tinfoil hat looking, not tinfoil hat, but tinfoil looking physical craft, right? With little green men inside of it, kind of described looking more round or oval shaped, and maybe some strange lights coming from it. And what's interesting now is that we have all kinds of different phenomena, right? We have like plasma craft, we have morphine, kinds of craft, and the things that people are experiencing now, and things like that really weren't being reported even back, 20 years ago, which kind of does, strike me as odd that why and how has it changed so quickly from a physical tin can craft type thing into lights and anomalies and flying entities and like all kinds of different things. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've looked into that and I tried to like, is the UFO phenomena changing? Is it evolving? And there's some evidence to say that it is. I mean, if you go back to the 1800s, we have very few reports of what we would call modern day saucers. And there was, of course, the airship wave of 1890s, 1900s, which involved Zeppelin-like objects with propellers and little gondolas, and very much like, a Zeppelin. And that sort of faded away. And I'm still not sure what to make of the airship wave. But there was the Swedish ghost rockets of 1930s. We had the Foo Fighters in World War II. And that's when, the modern age of UFOs began in 1947. We started seeing saucers. And the saucers dominated for years. And still, that's mostly what I get. I have to tell you, most people who see a UFO will describe your sort of classic flying saucer. But the shapes are incredibly varied. I've talked to people who've seen globes, cigar-shaped craft, manta ray-shaped craft, chevrons, V-shaped craft, triangles, hexagonal craft, asymmetrical craft, weird blobs of light, like you described, craft that look like they're transmogrifying and it seemed to be alive, a living being. So it's hard to categorize, hard to make sense of. Makes perfect sense, I think, that UFOs would evolve. Some crafts do seem to, be more superior to others, perhaps. I've talked to people who've seen craft that were riveted with steel plates, a saucer. Some of these may be ours. I think particularly the triangular craft, there's a lot of buzz in the field right now about TRV-3s, I think they're called, which, probably are ours, as near as I can tell. I started going through my files. I'm like, wow, I don't have a whole lot of triangular craft. I have some, pretty sure they're ET, but most of the triangular craft, probably not, probably our own. And I have been told that a lot of the UFOs seen around Air Force bases, up to 20% even, are probably our own. But I've tried to match this up to like what type of ET and stuff, are the mantids in the, the V-shaped craft, or, the grays in the saucer. I can't find any correlation there. But still, there are still your classic saucers from the 60s, 50s and 60s going on today. But yeah, all kinds of shaped craft. It's very hard to categorize and make sense of.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I think of it as like a spiritual kind of phenomenon, right? Like, and maybe this is just my thought, is that the craft hasn't so much evolved, but our perception of the craft has evolved, right? Because our perception is everything. Maybe they were always light orbs and could shapeshift and do all these crazy things and mutate and turn into whatever they want. But we couldn't perceive what was happening back then. And the only way we could see them is if they could appear in a way that we could understand and wrap our minds around, like a disc or a saucer. And over time, when our consciousness and perceptions evolved enough, they were more able to show themselves as they actually are. But that theory is kind of out the window whenever you said, that they're still flying saucers and all that. But yeah, that's just kind of a thought that I kind of had.
Yeah, I don't know. There is a kind of a weird matrix-like aspect to the universe, and perception does play a role. And a person's beliefs. I mean, ETs can put on a disguise, a screen memory, and they can change the appearance of a UFO. There's a number of cases I've investigated personally, and I've certainly read about this many times, where a person will see what they think is a helicopter or a plane, and it transforms into a craft of unknown origins, or vice versa. They'll see a classic saucer come swooping down over them, and it's a helicopter. But it's clearly not a helicopter because it changed its appearance. They can mimic anything. So there is a very strong interdimensional aspect to this, which I think is why some very well-educated researchers have raised the question, is this even aliens? Are we dealing with an intelligence that can put on different masks? And it's my assessment, is just my personal opinion, that we are dealing with aliens and that they do have the ability to transmogrify. They can change the shape of their craft. They are very, very advanced. And just because something can move interdimensionally or travel through time does not preclude them from being extraterrestrial. I think the evidence is very strong that we're dealing with extraterrestrials, because these things leave landing traces. These things take people on board, and we see extraterrestrials on board, and the people who are being taken on board are not in bed. They're not where they should be. These things leave metal fragments. These things have crashed. These things, apparently our government has possession of these craft. And if they do, if we have craft secreted at Area 51 and Wright-Patterson and Edwards and Norton Air Force Base and all these Air Force bases, and we have bodies, which I think we do. We've got hundreds of whistleblower accounts. Well, I think we know what it is. That recent Pentagon disclosure, which was a nice tiny step forward for all humankind. They did say, oh, maybe it could be possibly ET, but no, it's balloons. But they left it open, but they're just discussing sightings. Honestly, why not talk about landings? Why not talk about onboard encounters? Why not talk about Roswell? They know for sure what it is. They're flat out covering this up, still lying.
And unfortunately, that's basically all that we're going to get from the government. So how do we tell the difference between a extraterrestrial craft and a military craft? Because in case people don't know, just like you stated, we've had back engineered craft for the past 60 to 70 years. But when I was at the Laughlin UFO mega conference on the Skywatch, and the gentleman said, now this is just from his knowledge, right? Said if it's a blinking light in the sky, it's not a UFO, because airplanes and air traffic are required to have blinking lights on, which, makes sense. But at the same time, I've also heard others say that the real ET craft have very colorful lights on them and act erratic, kind of like the experience that you were talking about with the craft zipping back and forth, right? So what's your thoughts on that, Preston? So how do we tell the difference between what a military craft would be, or a three-letter agency craft, and an actual extraterrestrial craft from your experiences and the people that you've interviewed?
Yeah, I've been talking to some contactees about this, because there's quite a bit of concern about this now. And from what I've been told from people who should know, that there are in fact ways to tell the difference. It's not always easy. I think this is a very delicate situation right now because we apparently do have these craft. We have reverse engineered them. We are flying them around. And one, a number of contacts have told me that, yeah, if it's a triangular craft, it's more than likely our own, particularly if you can hear it in any way. People will often describe UFOs as being perfectly silent, except for perhaps a low whooshing noise or a low buzz. But that definitely, if something's dead silent and it's hovering above you, chances are it's not ours. And if it's saucer shaped and darting around, probably not ours either. But there's some good evidence. We do have some saucers as well. So I think we're at a really tricky time right now. When I interview someone, there are basically three main markers that I look for, which would be lack of sound, strange appearance, and unconventional movement. And those three things, when they come together, I think it's a pretty good chance you're dealing with a UFO. But I would add to that your own psychic impression of it, because people will get a message from these guys. And I'm not sure our government has that ability yet, but I think they're probably working on it. I'm nervous about all of this, actually, that they could mimic actual UFOs quite effectively. So ultimately, I think we're going to have to rely on the whole psychic intuitive aspect of this. And when these things start communicating with you, and they will, that's how you know for sure. But one more thing I would say is if it has any protuberances of any kind, this is what I've been told from contactees. It's got, if it's perfectly smooth, mirror smooth, no protuberances, that's not ours. But if it's got all kinds of doodads sticking out of it, that could very well be our own. But I don't know. This is a tough situation right now. It's like the whole problem with photographing UFOs. It's very easy to Photoshop this stuff. So I don't trust photographs that much, certainly not like we used to, because this stuff can be faked.
Yeah, people have been caught throwing up frisbees in the air and photographing it. Yeah, it's insane the amount of fakery that's gone on in this field, especially the video aspect, because they have so much fake stuff out there that it makes it almost impossible to tell. And I think that's done on purpose, right? They put out fake stuff and make it extra extraordinary and make it crazy awesome, so that whenever the real stuff gets viewed, it's not as spectacular, right?
Yep.
And people don't believe the real thing and they believe the lie.
They're spending a lot of money. There is a cover-up. This is no joke. An enormous amount of money, time and effort is being put forth by the people who are covering this up to make UFO witnesses look like idiots, on drugs, liars, hoaxers. A lot of disinformation. This is very serious stuff. People have lost their lives over coming forward, whistleblowers. This is very serious. This is not a joke at all. Cover-up is still in place to this day.
And I would love to get into why that cover-up from your opinion and everything, but we're kind of running out of time here. And I wanted to get to this very last question before I let you go. I kind of wanted to wrap this back around to the astral travel topic, maybe leave the viewers and give the viewers some tips on how to get outside of your body, because I know for myself, it's very difficult for me to do. I almost done it once, but I instantly came back. And it's the same way with my dreams too. The very moment that I start to realize I'm dreaming and might be able to control things in my dream, I instantly wake up. It's super weird. It's almost like someone or something wants me to be grounded in this reality. But maybe share some tips that kind of helped you when you first started beginning to go through this astral travel process in order to get out of your body. Maybe something that got you relaxed and get you into the mode of getting outside of your body without giving away all of your secrets, of course.
First of all, I would say that we all have astral travel, out of body experiences every night. So the trick is really remembering it. Do dream work, keep a dream journal. Remember every dream you can. Work really hard on memory recall. Also, I think it's important to say that it's not dangerous. It's safe as sleeping. One of the main obstacles is people fear doing this. Also, laziness. They don't try the exercises. They don't think they can do it. They're skeptical. So overcome that. It's safe and it's easy to do. Anyone can do it. It's a natural human ability. And it's basically a process of physically relaxing. So you just lay down and relax all your muscle groups for a good 20 minutes to the point where you don't feel your body at all, or you feel heaviness or lightness or numbness or tingling, or ultimately what you want to get to is a vibratory state. You'll feel kind of like an electric shock. And then you know you're primed and ready to go. But it's more than just physically relaxing, which I think is where most people fall short. You can always relax a little bit more. So relax, relax, relax. And then at some point, stop paying attention to your body, turn 180 degrees inward and pay attention to your thoughts. Ignore the physical world around you. And pay attention to your thoughts and relax your thoughts. Let all your thoughts go by. You'll start seeing images and colors, and you'll hear your thoughts. And then you're ready to do the actual exercises, which are visualizations and affirmations. You tell yourself, I will remember. I will go out of body tonight. You have to intend to. You want to wrap both desire, intention, and imagination. So imagine yourself going out of body. Intend it, desire it, put that effort forth, really put forth your willpower. And along with that, do visualizations. And this works really well. This is probably the real secret. Once you're in that super relaxed state, like after you've taken a hot tub, you know that feeling? You're just totally relaxed. Or maybe you wake up early morning to go to the bathroom and you're back in bed and you're just so relaxed. That's a really good time to do this. Visualize yourself running along a path, running really fast, and that will lift you right out. Or visualize yourself on a swing set, back and forth, or on the bow of a boat going up and down in the waves, or in an elevator or an escalator going up, or holding a balloon that's taking you up. Anything with movement works really well. Spin like Wonder Woman. This will work, and it's very effective. Another is to just visualize yourself in another place you know well, whether it's a nature scene or a room. Another would be if you have a deceased loved one, focus on meeting them. Say, I want to meet my deceased loved one. Remember their voice. Remember what they sound like, what they smell like. Visualize them. And really put forth that effort saying you want to meet them. I call that the love bridge. That will take you right out. They will help you. Appeal to your spirit guides. And one more trick. And this is the trick that works every time if you actually do it. Excuse me. Problem is people don't do it. But if you do this exercise, I guarantee it'll work. You have to do critical reality testing all day long, once an hour. I mean, if you can do it 3 times a day, but if you do it once an hour, this will work in a week. Seriously, you want to test reality. You have to ask yourself every time you go to the bathroom, every time you take a drink, every time you do any kind of behavior, as long as it's regular. Am I out of body? Could I be dreaming right now? Am I out of body right now? And look around. Does the world look normal? Because you're awake and you think, oh, I know I'm awake. This is ridiculous. But that's the problem. Because when you're dreaming, when you're out of body, you assume you're awake. It looks so real that it never even occurs to you to question it. So you have to do reality testing. It's not only a matter of like questioning and looking for anomalies. Actually test reality. Try to jump up and fly. And this can look ridiculous. So maybe just take an object, a pencil or a ball, and throw it up into the air and see if it floats. Or try to push your finger through the wall, because you can interpenetrate objects when you're out of body. Do this every day. And it will work. One time you'll be like, all right, I'm going to do this stupid exercise. I know I'm awake, but I'm going to try it. And you jump up and you float. It will be the biggest shock you've ever had when you try to push your finger through your desk at work and your hand goes right through it. And boom, suddenly you're floating over your bed going, oh my God, I'm out of body already. That will work. Critical reality testing. That is the secret. I hope people try that because it works so well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Preston. That was amazing. And I hope people try that. I'm going to try that for sure. And I think the key here would be persistence, right? Like be persistent with it and do it all the time.
It took me about 1 to 2 months. And that's how, that's all it took. I started having experiences after 1 month. It took 2 months to get really, start having my first OBEs, but that's not long.
Awesome. Thank you. For anyone that is wanting to try that, I will be trying them, and I hope everyone else will too. Preston, thank you again so much, brother, for coming on and having a chat with me. Where can people find your work if they want to buy your books, any social media or anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Ryder. I do have a website, prestondennett.weebly.com. I think if you just use a search engine on my name, it'll take you there. But I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I've recently started putting out videos on YouTube, sharing my research. So yeah, these are important subjects, and I really appreciate you having me on your show because UFOs are important. Yeah, it's important that people have these out-of-body experiences. It's so much fun. Trust me, you can thank me later, but try it. Just try it. I think you'll be amazed.
Thank you so much, Preston. The links to all of Preston's information will be in the description of this video. So go and check out his YouTube channel, buy his books, check out his website, and support him. And thumbs up his videos, comment, subscribe, and that's how we help each other, and that's how we bust through all the censorship that's going on and get to the real disclosure, because we know that the government isn't going to give us anything that's worthwhile. They know exactly what's going on, and we are the disclosure. I 100% believe that. So for everyone else, thanks so much for watching and listening, and thanks to everyone that's in the chat. Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button to help out the channel and the YouTube algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And you can also catch this episode and any other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and you can also download them on Spreaker.com. Links to all that is in the description. And a reminder for next week, the show is going to be at 5 p.m. PST instead of 6. So when you see the video pop up next Monday, hit the reminder bell. So thank you guys so much. And thank you again, Preston, for the enlightening conversation. Would love to have you back on in the future sometime.
Hey, you got it. Thanks, Ryder.
And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep love in your heart for everyone, and stay safe out there. See you guys next week.